Shabbat Shalom. It's really, really lovely to be with you all tonight. So, Passover has always been one of my favorite Jewish holidays. And I know you're probably thinking, why are you talking about Passover? We'll get there, I promise. I have vivid memories of reenacting the Exodus story around the Seder table, using puppets and plastic frogs to represent the plagues, and even dressing up as if we had just left Egypt in a hurry to wander through the desert for 40 years. Perhaps my family took the commandment to tell the story a little more literally than most. But maybe that's the point. Judaism doesn't simply ask us to know the story of the Exodus. It asks us to relive it. Every year at the Seder, we are commanded to see ourselves as though we personally came out of Egypt. And even tonight, and every Shabbat, we sing Mi Chamocha, recalling the moment when our ancestors were finally redeemed by God from Egypt's grasp. And it's not just Passover and Shabbat. Throughout the Jewish calendar, we return again and again and again to moments from our collective past. On Sukkot, we remember God's protection during the Israelites' 40 years in the wilderness by building and dwelling in these weird huts called sukkahs. On Shavuot, we remember the revelation at Mount Sinai by studying Torah, and in many communities by eating cheesecake to celebrate the sweetness of receiving God's teachings. And the list goes on. The point is, Judaism fills our calendar with opportunities to remember. In this week's Parsha, Akev, Moshe reminds the Israelites of everything they are commanded to remember. Again and again and again, he says, Zachor, remember, and often says, Al tishkach, do not forget. At first, it sounds really repetitive, but then we remember who Moshe is speaking to. The Israelites are standing on the edge of a completely new chapter. After 40 years in the wilderness, they are finally about to enter the promised land. Soon, the greatest threat to their survival will no longer be slavery. It will no longer be wandering through the desert. Instead, Moshe sees a different danger altogether. Comfort. Homes, stability, full stomachs, prosperity, ordinary life. Moshe worries that once life becomes comfortable, the people will begin to believe that they accomplished everything on their own. They will forget God, the one who sustained them, guided them, and brought them to this moment. Commentator Bachya ben Asher suggests Moshe's fear was valid. He says that prosperity can quietly lead to forgetfulness. So Moshe warns them, "V'haya im shachoach tishkach et Adonai Elohecha," if you do indeed forget Adonai, our God, your God, ha'idoti vachem hayom ki avod tovedun, I warn you this day, you shall surely perish. This seems a little bit extreme, no? If you forget God, you'll perish? Medieval commentator Or HaChaim reframes this for us, suggesting that this perishing Moshe speaks of is not a literal death, but a metaphysical one. In other words, forgetting God has an effect on our souls, resulting in a spiritual amnesia which severs our connection with the divine, including all memories of God's goodness and grace. At first glance, this problem sounds like a personal problem. This is a private religious issue. But I'd like to suggest that Akev is showing us that forgetting has communal consequences. If we look closely at this parsha, the Israelites aren't simply told not to forget God. They're given an entire history lesson. Moshe reminds them that they were slaves in Egypt, that God brought them out with a mighty hand, that they wandered the desert for 40 years, that they were hungry and tired, and they were a stiff-necked people who complained relentlessly. That manna fell from the heaven to sustain them, and finally, they were brought to the promised land. The message here is clear. Remember how you got here. Remember what you've been through. But there's a catch, and this is what really fascinates me. The people listening to Moshe never actually experienced slavery. The generation that left Egypt has already died in the wilderness. These Israelites didn't witness the plagues. They didn't walk through the Red Sea. They can literally not remember events that they never lived. They weren't born yet. So what gives? Yet Moshe tells them to remember anyway. And we are also commanded to remember these events that we definitely never lived through. Why? Perhaps because Jewish memory has never just been about recalling the past. It's not about memorizing history from a textbook. Perhaps memory instead has more to do with shaping our identity as a Jewish people. Because when we remember where we came from, we strengthen and empower our collective Jewish identity. And when we forget our story, we not only sever our relationship with God, but we begin to lose our relationships with one another. And we begin to lose that very identity that makes us B'nai Yisrael. Who is it that we become when we forget that we were strangers, that we were the vulnerable, that we suffered and struggled? Do we become more compassionate or less? Do we become more connected to one another or less? I suspect Moshe knew the answer. Perhaps this is the perishing Moshe really feared. Not the disappearance of individual Jews, but the unraveling of Jewish peoplehood itself. A people is bound together not only by shared ancestry, but by shared memory that reinforces our shared values and purpose. When we fail to keep these memories alive, we risk inheriting Judaism without truly inhabiting it. Thankfully, Judaism guards against that kind of forgetting by creating signposts throughout the Jewish year that I mentioned earlier. I personally think back to those Passover Seders from my childhood, my family's theatrical retelling of the Exodus, and those moments are more than fond memories. They are the way Judaism taught me who I am and why I am connected to the Jewish people. But what about those who don't have childhood memories like that? Those who didn't grow up with these rituals or have chosen Judaism and Jewish rituals later in life. They are creating these memories for the very first time. These stories and memories are no less sacred. In fact, they remind us that Jewish memory is not only something we inherit, it is also something we intentionally build and share and create anew year after year. All of us who make up the Jewish people are here to remind us that memory is not and cannot be a passive pursuit. It has to be an active process we do together. And each time we tell the Passover story around the Seder table, share a meal in a sukkah, and hear the blowing of the shofar, sorry, it's not so far away, we get these little reminders that help us become who we as a people are meant to be. Am Yisrael, literally translated to mean the people who wrestle with God. As we turn toward the high holiday season, I ask you, what is it that you need a reminder to remember? Which new stories and memories do you want to create this year? And which Jewish rituals do you want to embrace to better connect with our Jewish ancestors and with each other? It is my blessing tonight that we continue to remember, not only with our minds, but with our lives and how we live them. And may the memories we cherish become the legacy we leave for those who come after us. Shabbat Shalom.